that particular theory. Blossoms on your flowers are increased. The reason why is because what it does, have you ever heard of NPK, nitrogen, and you have phosphorus and potash? Well, N is everything up. It produces green leaves, and P is for the roots. It's down. Remember this, up, down, and all around. So down is the P, and the K is all around, the overall health of your plant. And so blossoms, what would you think that would be? That's down. That's the part that's down. If you put the phosphorus, you will get more flowers. Now, you don't want to really stress the plant. If you know that secret, there's actually things you can buy on the open market that'll really hammer down on that plant to make it produce a lot. I don't do that because I like the plant to be run along its natural cycle. But remember this, NPK, up, down, and all around. That's what those stand for as far as what they do. Weed resistance is better because you'll have a stronger plant. The water holding capacity of your soil is increased, and Compost Tea will actually break down, it'll help to break down toxins in your soil. And the reason why is because Compost Tea, when you use a bubbler, that's called brewed, by the way. Now there's another technique that's called steeped. Now steeped is where you don't use a bubbler, you just come and stir it every, a couple times a day. I'd rather use a bubbler and steep it because I get more life. That's what I'm trying to do with my compost tea, is create life so that that life can come in and it can heal my soil and it can heal the plant and it can keep my plants from getting sick. You get increased quality and taste of fruits and vegetables. It's 100% safe, 100% natural. Most importantly, compost tea is cheap, and you get several of the benefits of applying compost to your garden without the hassle of moving truckloads of soil around in your yard. Part of the feature of container gardening is that you're not killing yourself in your bag. Some people, they can't do gardening because of that. But I'd love to see everybody be able to garden. Please note, compost tea is by no means a replacement for balancing the minerals in your soil or adding organic matter. If the minerals in your soils are not balanced and you're lacking adequate organic matter, you will never fully realize the magic of compost tea. So each one of these things is just one piece of the puzzle. It's not an end-all be-all. But if you use a really good soil mixture in the beginning and you follow certain practices that are really good to create life in your soil, and you're taking really good care and giving a foliar feed and watering your plants with those nutrients once a week each, then you're going to have fantastic growth. We already covered that. The two kinds of compost tea, brewed or steeped. Brewing adds a bubbler. Steeped is just stirred. You can make more in a plastic trash can for larger gardeners. So if you have a really big garden, you can take one of those small plastic trash cans and fill that and just regulate your mixtures according to the gallons. I gave you a 5-gallon mixture, but you can easily up it to 20 or 30. And don't put a lid on it. That's an important thing because it needs to get oxygen. Molasses encourages the growth of beneficial bacteria. Brix and sweetness is enhanced. Epsom salts can be added to provide additional magnesium, especially good for flowering plants. Good for reducing salts buildup. Kelp or alfalfa meal is added to provide a rich assortment of micronutrients. Instead of just brewing teas for quick, valuable, water-soluble nutrients from the compost or manure, you can breed a larger population of beneficial aerobic bacteria and fungi in the tea. It is the microherd in our soil, compost and teas, that is really more important in soil development and disease control than just the soluble nutrients. Those are the guys that are in there, they're living in your soil, and they're protecting your soil from the monsters that will come kill your plants. Now I want to cover some different types of container gardening. I want you to be exposed to some different ideas. I'm not going to cover exactly how to do everything this morning, although I want you to know what's out there. As you can see here, this was over the winter in my greenhouse. I heat with a wood-burning stove. That's how I can keep my avocado trees alive. And I have these 3, I call them floating raft boxes. And this is what every 15 days, remember I told you, I plant lettuce the 1st and the 15th of every month. The 1st and the 15th of every month I change all the tanks out in my hydroponics. Now, these are hydroponic tanks. Basically, there's 3 of them. And I've always got lettuce coming in. Some of you guys have tasted that lettuce and found out it's really good quality. It's wonderful lettuce. Here's a picture of them actually growing. This I took yesterday. This is romaine lettuce, and this is, as you can see, a little bit along behind it. And then I'm getting ready to probably plant tomorrow or the next day. I was a little off because I got a little busy. But let me show you what you can do. This is romaine when it's fully grown. This is beautiful stuff. Now, what this is remember, I will use a similar variety of lettuce. I don't mix my varieties. So I want you to think about that. I'll keep a similar variety. I may have 2 different kinds of that same variety. Like for example, this is red and this is green. That's Adriana and that's Red Cross lettuce. You'll find that in real high-end restaurants. And here's some more pictures. Here's tomatoes I had in the springtime growing in pots. See, I practice what I preach. Here's the Red Cross lettuce, and this is Adriana. Now, you might think I'm out here just knocking a hole in it every day, working hard to get these lettuces to grow. But I want to tell you something. I don't do anything to these lettuces. It's incredible. To make these boxes work, plant different lettuce varieties every 15 days, harvest over 6 or 7 days, and you will always have lettuce. Keep the same types of lettuces in the same box. Don't mix it up too much. Harvest after 30 to 45 days. You know, some lettuces during a certain time of year, you'll get to be able to harvest that lettuce in about 28 days. I mean, this stuff is a strong producer for lettuce. You can grow all the lettuce that you want to eat and that you care to eat. No need to ever change the nutrients. Just set it and forget it. Remember I talked about how hard it is? I don't do anything to those. I watch them grow and I come back in 30 days and I pick my lettuce. That's all I do, literally. Because that nutrient that I have measured out, I'll give you the formula, it stays in that box just fine for 30 days or even 45 days until I'm ready to harvest, and then I eat them. The boxes are made of 1 sheet of 1/2-inch plywood cut into 3 equal sections. So you'll buy a piece of plywood that's 4x8 sheet, and you'll cut it into 3 exact and equal sections. That's what you use as the basis. And then you take 2x6 sides. The sides are made of 2x6s. They're nailed onto the plywood. They're pretty easy to make. And then I take 6mm black plastic. You can get all this stuff at Lowe's. And a 1x2 band all the way around to hold the plastic liner. Now, the nutrients that I use is Master Blend, calcium nitrate, and magnesium sulfate, and C90. Now there's that C90. This provides all the micronutrients So I've got every single kind of nutrient you could possibly think about rolling around inside that water. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but the ancient Babylonians used to grow hydroponically. They'd have a nutrient water that they'd feed in their pot, and they'd do that by hand. They've been uncovering stuff in ancient Babylon, and they read on some of these stones, I guess, that they had been doing hydroponic gardening. So it's an age-old thing. Plants are really easy to grow like this. So sitting on top of the boxes are styrofoam 4x8 sheets with 2-inch holes for the net cups. Now I use a little hole saw that I bought from Lowe's. And you know, this thing paid for itself within the first 6 months, because my wife was spending about $10 to $15 a week on lettuce. Roughly, it may be more than that. But anyway, we rarely ever run out and have to buy our own lettuce anymore because of those boxes. On the back porch should not be a problem to set this thing up. Just keep the ants away. They will try to farm aphids. Now, if you go on my website, you will be able to get this study. So a lot of you are taking notes. But if you don't have a computer, you'll want to take some notes. But it's really unnecessary to take any notes if you have a computer, because you can download this study. I have all my classes online on my website. Now this is deep water culture hydroponics. You can see the little 5-gallon bucket. Now this was, remember the bucket I brought in the beginning class? This was that tomato that was about that high. We kept cutting that thing back and kept cutting it back because we did not want it to grow in the house. We just wanted to overwinter it long enough so when we got to springtime, we could really just hit the ground running. And that's what we did. And as you can see, now it's hard to get a perspective on this plant, but this is about where my head comes to, roughly, right here. This thing is taller. This greenhouse, the very apex of it, is 9 feet and some change. And this thing is right up at the apex of it. And we're just barely into summertime. I mean, I'm going to be tying this thing up. And what they generally do is they'll go over the roof of your greenhouse, you tie them up, and then they just fill you with tomatoes. You just sit there picking tomatoes off of them. So the reason I'm bringing this up, because some people are daunted by this. They think, oh, that's a lot of work or a lot of setup. But it's not, it doesn't cost that much. It's a few dollars, yes, to get set up, but then you never have to spend it again. This nutrient will last me 5 years that I use, just one bag of it. And this infrastructure, once I'm done, I don't have to keep buying it over and over again. It's done. And I got this one tomato plant. You know, during the end of the year, if I want to cut it back here and bring it inside the house and make it go next year, I'll do that. But this thing is going to turn into a tree. It's already close. And I want you to notice, you notice how aerated it is in here? I cut the leaves back inside because tomato plants, they want to get air inside of them. And if you don't do that, they'll get the blight. Another thing you want to do is, you want to cut all the branches off the base. You don't want any branches down there because you want, the tomatoes love to breathe. If they can't breathe, they'll get the blight and die. So here's another picture of it. I took this yesterday or last week sometime. And here's a picture of the whole row. Now these tomatoes are about 2 months old. Now you see they're just young'uns. And I've got them all on an irrigation system right here. Here's my control bucket. I just keep water to about this level. And I add nutrient every 2 weeks. I change out my nutrient. And look at these things. For 2-month-old tomato plants, they're almost as big as that thing. I'm going to have a really hard time with tomatoes, I think, this year. And this is 1, 2, 3 plants. Now, I've got more than that. I've got 6. I'm going to end up with about 5 or 6 of these monsters. My theory is, why kill yourself or knock yourself out in a garden? If you can just set up, like spend $30 or $40 and set up a 5-gallon bucket, put a little bit of nutrient in it, you could do it by hand if you want. It's not hard. I don't have any pumps on this stuff. There's no pumps. Now there is a bubbler that bubbles every 15 minutes on the hour. That's what helps these things get oxygenated. But the nutrient lasts me for like 5 years because I got a small setup. It's not a large setup. So why couldn't a lot of you put, say, you know, maybe 2 or 3 of these big monsters on your back porch? You'd be giving away tomatoes to your neighbors. And I make sure within my formulas that I have lots of micronutrients so you know you're getting a healthy thing. There's some gardeners out there that like to hammer hydroponic growers. They say, oh, they're just giving the plant a couple things and that stuff's not healthy. That's not true. If you put C90 in, if you know anything about hydroponics, you know that that hydroponic mixture has everything that plant needs to live, but the C90 puts it over the top. So it's got every nutrient that you possibly need, and it's perfectly balanced. Perfectly balanced. Seawater is really, really similar to your blood. I don't know if you guys know that. So here's a picture up close of one of the little young'uns that I have. This is about a 2-month-old. It's doing quite well. It's already got tomatoes on it, and you can tell it's young because it's a little spindly. I've got a shade cloth on my greenhouse. I have to do that. If I got straight sun in that greenhouse, my tomatoes and all my plants would be cooked. So I put about a 40% shade cloth on it, and that's the perfect thing for vegetables, fruit trees, any kind of plant you want. It's a good wide variety. Some plants, you know, tomatoes might prefer a little more, but that's a good all around. Now this is a system, it's called Dutch bucket that I use. I'm growing peppers in this, but this can grow tomatoes. These are 3.5 gallon pots I bought from Home Depot. If you notice, they're always black. And I've got a tank here that's about 40 gallons, roughly. It's about 27 gallons. And so I fill this tank, like I say, once every 2 weeks. I change it out. Now this tank has a pump in